Welcome back to the FTN NFL Draft Preview Series. I'm your host, Mike Randle. Follow me on Twitter at RandleRand, and we continue our mission to give you insight here to all our subscribers and everyone here who supports FTN, insight into each of the 32 NFL teams. And today we're going to talk about the Bears, the Chicago Bears, folks, with the guy that I've gone to multiple times who's been prophetic in his insight, Jacob Infante, lead NFL draft analyst, Bears writer for WC Gridiron. Follow him on Twitter at Jacob Infante24. Jacob, we talked to you last year coming into the season. Now we get a chance to talk to you about the NFL draft. How you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Mike, I'm doing great. It's a very, very busy time of year, very interesting time of year. I mean, especially from a Bears perspective, but I'm loving every second of it, honestly. Like all this speculation that's going on with what they're going to do in the draft and in free agency. This is what I live for. This is my favorite time of the year, and it helps that the Bears have more resources than anybody. So I'm really stoked for this offseason.
Yeah, and it's exciting too because we talked, Jacob, last year coming into the season about the Bears, and there were questions. There were questions about Justin Fields, whether he could be a franchise quarterback. I think he dispelled those rumors. He is clearly the go-to guy in the Bears offense. Obviously, 3-13 season, not what they wanted, but I think you have your quarterback, which a lot of teams don't have, and it gives you a focus here as you move forward.
No, absolutely. I think that what Justin was able to show in such a difficult situation with an offensive line that had a lot of moving pieces, had some injuries, and even the starters, didn't necessarily play all that great.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are really two offensive linemen who are solidified to start next year, maybe three, but there are going to be a lot of moving pieces. Wide receiver room wasn't all that great. First year offensive coordinator, first year for Fields in the system. Just a lot of stuff going against him, and I think he performed well. There's still room for improvement, obviously, but I think that the plays that he was able to make under one of the most difficult situations for any quarterback in this class, I think was really impressive. So I think that's huge for the Bears because they get to use this offseason to really just invest in so many other different positions. They don't have to worry about quarterback. I don't buy any of those rumors or rumblings or whatever. They might go QB. I don't buy it for a second. So, I'm excited to see what they do with all that capital, honestly.
Yeah, and I think also there's opportunities now. They've solidified Fields. Certainly, fantasy community here, Darnell Mooney was a big disappointment for us, but there are weapons. They tried to bring in a couple of guys during the season. Do you think, just looking at offense right now, what will be their priority? Obviously, bolster offensive line, but maybe add a weapon or two here for Fields?
Yeah, so I think they'll look to add a wide receiver somehow. I don't know if that's going to be, through a free agent signing, which if you're adding a free agent realistically in this class is probably not going to make a massive impact. It's just another, guy to throw in there. They could look in the trade market, depending on who's available. Like, don't know if DeAndre Hopkins or something like that's going to be, an option for them. But say if like a younger receiver, maybe like a T. Higgins. I know that's more of a long shot if the Bengals trade him, but I think they'll be active in looking for guys. And then obviously in the draft, there's it's a solid wide receiver class. So I think they'll look for someone there. Mooney coming off of, getting hurt, had the 1,000-yard season the year before. I think, Fields loves him. The Bears love him. So there's a lot of optimism for him to bounce back. And the Chase Claypool trade, obviously giving up the first pick in the second round for that kind of production the semantics don't look great. But I think that you're also looking at Claypool joined the team, midway through the year. It's a difficult offense for a receiver to grasp. He got banged up. Fields got banged up. It was tough to build chemistry. So almost by default, he has to be better next year. So I'm expecting bigger things, most certainly out of Claypool next year. I'm interested in seeing if he plays well enough to get an extension, because if you're trading that early of a pick for him, you're probably looking to extend him at some point. So I think they still are one receiver away. Honestly, I'd love for them to get like a true alpha number one guy, but I think they're still one away, and a few offensive linemen. I think realistically 2 new starters. I don't think they'll cut Cody Whitehair, but keep Braxton Jones at left tackle, Tevin Jenkins at right guard. And then center and right tackle, I think you're looking at new starters.
And I'm curious how you think they're going to go with the draft because of the defense last in DVOA this past year. But you're in a division here, Jacob, where there is opportunity. We don't know about Aaron Rodgers. I think he's on the 4-day dark retreat right now. Minnesota certainly got hot, had a good start to the year, didn't end in the best way. Detroit is up and coming, but there is opportunities for quick growth here. But I think they have to solidify that defense. What are they looking there with free agents and or the draft?
So I expect defensive line to be just a massive overhaul, whether that be through free agency or the draft or both. I think they're just going to go all out in that because their defensive line, especially when they traded Robert Quinn away, they just couldn't get any pass rush. I'm saying this as someone who doesn't watch every single team every single week, but having watched several games and having watched every other team at some point, I feel pretty confident saying the Bears had one of the worst pass rushes in the entire NFL, if not the worst. I mean, there's next to no pressure up the middle, no pressure off the edge. Just a really disappointing group overall, and some little bit of spurts against the run, but there are also some times where opposing running backs just got to shoot right up the middle with next to no resistance. Just a very tough performance to watch, really. So I think defensive line is going to be massive for them. If they stay put at number one, I feel very confident it's going to be Will Anderson or Jalen Carter.
Okay.
If they trade back, which I think is more likely just because they have a lot of needs, Ryan Poles loves accumulating draft capital, as we saw with his, several moves on day 3 last year. Then I think you're looking at maybe if you move to number 4, if you trade with the Colts, which I think is a perfect opportunity for both teams, then you're going to get at least one of Anderson or Carter there. I think that if you can get one of those guys, that's going to be massive for your defense. But, you trade back a little bit more than end up like a Miles Murphy or a Tyree Wilson, something like that. I think that defensive line is just going to be massive. Maybe receiver or O-line if they trade back far enough, but I think that most of the value in the top 10 is going to be at the defensive line position, and I think that fits perfectly with what the Bears need.
So that's interesting, Jacob. You think right now, if you had to guess, and of course we still have a few months, things are going to evolve, you think they're sort of leaning towards trading back as opposed to keeping that pick?
Yeah, no, that's what I think. I think, obviously the first pick, it's everyone's dream, but you just have so many needs on the roster. And the Bears, for such a long time, they were under Ryan Pace. They were so aggressive in trading up that they don't have much in the way of quantity in young guys that they can build around. And I think that Poles recognizes that, and that's going to be something that he changes, at least with his approach going forward.
Now, with Poles and Eberflus, talk about the culture of the team here, how it's changed, what the focus is, because I often think that's how the winning formula starts, is that you have a philosophy, you have a culture change here. Now, with Fields aboard, having certainly some flashes of a quality season, and now looking at a different sort of mindset with the draft picks, just talk about the culture here that Poles has put together with Eberflus during that first season.
So there's a lot of optimism in that locker room, and I've been able to talk to some of the players. I've been able to hear what other players have said in press conferences and stuff like that. And the general consensus is everyone's excited for next year. And you got that sense like later in the season that they're like, okay, the Bears got eliminated from the playoffs. We're still going to keep fighting, but next year is going to be something special. I think they've really bought into kind of like the high energy, high effort style that Eberflus has. And I think it's going to be huge to see what happens once they invest in, several different positions. I think the guys that are sticking around, they know that there needs to be a lot of work done to the roster. They know that a lot of moves are going to be made, but they think there's a solid enough core in place that they can work with and then they can expand upon. So there's a lot of optimism, which is, from a distance kind of surprising considering they were the worst team in the NFL record-wise. But, you've got the quarterback. You've got some young guys who flashed. Jaquan Brisker looked really good. Tevin Jenkins looked good. That's just an example. Jack Sanborn, the undrafted linebacker, really showed up. So those are just a handful of guys, but I think there's definitely room for optimism, and I think you're going to see definitely opportunities for turnaround in 2023.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a possibility with the Bears here, Jacob, because we've seen teams sometimes get the right amount of players, a key free agent, like you said, Claypool comes in, stays for a little bit longer, gets acclimated, and then we move forward here. Last question, then I'll get you out of here, Jacob. Great insight as always. Talk to me about the backfield here for the Bears with the running back situation. Is it going to be David Montgomery again? How do you think they're going to work there in the backfield? Because you want to have a solid running back here with a young up-and-coming quarterback.
Yeah, so it's a little bit tough because I'll say this as someone who loves watching David Montgomery and thinks, I love David Montgomery as a guy. The organization loves David Montgomery as a guy. I just don't think they're going to pay big money to him simply because if you're paying big money to a running back, you want something a little bit more in the way of explosiveness and like home run plays. And Montgomery's solid. Like, he makes like a 5-yard gain out of, a 2-yard opportunity, but he just doesn't have that home run hitting talent. So I think that, under the right circumstances, they'll consider bringing him back, but I think Montgomery's going to want more money than the Bears are going to be willing to pay him. So I think you're looking at Khalil Herbert being the main guy next year in the Bears backfield. Though I'm sure they'll bring someone in, whether that's through free agency or the draft. It's a really good draft class for running backs, and the Bears have had a lot of success, in different regimes, but drafting running backs, through rounds like 3 and 6, where they invest a little bit in running backs and they get a lot out of it. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go down that route again this year. They'll look in free agency, I'm sure. I mean, it depends what happens if, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, I'm sure they'll sniff around. I mean, they've got the money for it. You might as well check to see the availability there. But realistically, I think you're sticking with Khalil Herbert, maybe sign like a veteran backup and then draft a guy and then just work from there. It's like a committee, I think. But you need someone who can catch passes and can pass protect, because those are Herbert's weaknesses. And at least from a fantasy perspective, I think that'll be huge to have, a quality receiving back in Chicago's backfield. So, just keep an eye out to see whoever they add, because I feel like whoever it is, they expect to take on a bigger role in the passing downs.
Great stuff as always, Jacob. Folks, Jacob Infante, follow him on Twitter, Jacob Infante 24, draft analyst, Bears writer, WC Gridiron. Jacob, we would love to have you back on here as we get close to the NFL draft. A lot of good stuff, a lot of dominoes that are going to fall from what Chicago does here. But as always, you did not disappoint. Some great insight. Thanks so much for joining us here. We appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to see what happens, and hopefully we can talk about this again once we get some of those dominoes to fall.